Okay, welcome everyone. Thank you for attending today's session. Please note that we're going to record this session and we'll look at providing the recording publicly. If we have time, we'll open the Q&A chat function up for questions near the end of the meeting, but we're not sure whether we will be able to do that yet, so just hold your fire on that one. I'd like to begin by acknowledging the traditional owners of the lands on which we're meeting today across Australia and to pay my respects to elders past, present and emerging. And I also extend that respect to any Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people who are with us today. I'm speaking to you from Ngunnawal and Ngambri country in Canberra, where most ARC staff have the privilege of living and working. We're very pleased to have attending today industry fellowship applicants and interested researchers, industry representatives, representatives from research officers and university research leadership, and colleagues from the ARC, including members of the policy and program branches and some of our executive directors. So we have with us Professor Annika Gowya, who's Executive Director of Social, Behavioural and Economic Sciences, and she will be speaking to you a bit later today, and Professor Stephen Weller, who's Executive Director, Engineering and Information Sciences. So just to give you a quick heads up about the purpose of today's session, the purpose of the session is to give you some information about the Industry Fellowships program now that it's completed its first round of funding. First, we'll provide you with some general information about the scheme for those who are tuning in for the first time. Then we'll provide an overview and some data on the first round of IFP, which is our shorthand for it, share insights with you from the ARC, including tips from our Executive Director who was present at the SAC meetings for the first iteration, and then some analysis of the outcomes of the successful applications from our policy team. And then a highlight of today is we're going to hear from some successful applicants to the scheme about why they chose the scheme for their research and their top tips. So we do have a fairly packed program and we're really looking forward to sharing this information with you. So now I'll move on to just quickly sketch in the primary goal of the Industry Fellowship program. And that goal is to create pathways of support for both academic researchers who move out in established careers in industry for a little while, and also, on the other hand, for industry-based researchers to work in university settings. So it's really set up, the program is really set up with that aim of increasing mobility and skill building in research collaboration, translation and commercialisation. The program objectives make clear that the aim of the scheme is to facilitate exchange with industry, and industry, of course, is very broadly defined, build up a pipeline of researchers who have skills that are readily translatable between universities and industry, and to undertake projects that at once contribute to solving challenges for industry and also have benefits to Australia. And those benefits might be commercial, they might be translation benefits, they might form startup companies, or have a whole range of other commercial, economic and social and cultural benefits for our country. So you will probably be familiar with the fact that there are 3 levels in IFP. The first level is the Early Career Industry Fellowship. That lasts for 3 years. In the middle is the Middle Career Industry Fellowship, which lasts for 4 years. And then we have a Laureate program in the Industry Fellowships as well, and that lasts for 5 years. And I think you can see on the slide there, with each increased level, there are increased amounts of money available for project costs. The project lasts for longer, it's got a longer duration. And by the time we arrive at that Laureate level, there's also a facility to employ postdocs and postgraduate students on the project. And the Laureate is also expected to undertake ambassadorial work and mentor and guide the careers of others. So in a way, it reflects some of the changes in levels that we already are familiar with through the Discovery Fellowship program, but in the Industry Fellowship program, it has this other layer of collaboration. At the present time, There's committed funding from the government for there to be 4 rounds of IFP. And you might recall that the scheme was first announced as part of the University Research Commercialisation Action Plan by the Prime Minister in February 2022. In total, there's going to be 200 early career fellows funded, 100 mid-career fellows, and 32 laureates funded over the course of this 4-year period. And as you know, the scheme was run for the first time last year. And in the first round, you can see we were awarded a quarter of the total number of fellowships that are available across the life of the scheme. And we expect to award similar numbers in each of the remaining 3 iterations of the scheme. And when we made those funding announcements a couple of months ago, there were 50 early career fellows, 25 mid-career fellows, and 8 laureates. We're proud to have approved funding of over $73 million to facilitate excellent research and collaboration across all 3 schemes. Now we'll drill down into a bit of a detail about exactly how many people applied and the success rates, and exactly how we assessed these applications. So first, beginning with the Industry Laureate Fellowships, the ARC received 116 applications for the Industry Laureates. These applications were assessed by detailed assessors and then by a 15-member selection advisory committee, which included industry experts on the one multidisciplinary panel. Next up are the mid-career fellowships, and at the mid-career level, the ARC received 314 applications for industry mid-career fellowships, and like the laureates, those applications were sent out to detailed assessors, and then those detailed assessment reports came back in to a 24-member selection advisory committee, which, like the laureates, included industry experts and members of our ARC College of Experts on one multidisciplinary panel. And finally, here we can see some data on the early career fellowships. So these were our most popular. We received 359 applications for industry early career fellowships, and those applications too were assessed by detailed assessors and then by 38 selection advisory committee members, including industry experts again. And we actually broke those up into 4 disciplinary panels. So they sat at the same time and they assessed application within those specific disciplinary panels for the early career fellowship. Now we thought we might drill down into some information about where the applications came from in terms of discipline. So the IFP aims to support applications from any discipline, but when the scheme was first set up, there was a hypothesis that perhaps applications and funded projects may be skewed towards STEM. Even though it's not an exclusive scheme for STEM, HASS applications are also very welcome. The following graph shows the success rate of disciplines aggregated up to a 2-digit level and broadly identified as either STEM or HASS. And it also then compares them to success rates in other schemes. So on its first iteration at least, this means that about 15% of applications came from HASS for a success rate around 6%. Whereas about 85% of the applications came from STEM, and they had a success rate of about 11%. And in saying this and in pointing this out, it's certainly not to discourage HASS disciplines from applying for the scheme. On the contrary, it's evidence that to address that disparity, we would like to encourage more quality HASS application. And we hope as people become more familiar with the scheme, that will be the case. You will see from the earlier charts that while there was 1 social science project awarded in the laureates, there were 5 in the mid-career fellowships and 9 in the early career fellowships. So there was success for non-STEM disciplines, just at a lower percentage rate than exists currently in some of our other fellowship schemes. And you can see that there with the Discovery fellowships. Now we've got a slide with a bit more detail about disciplinary success rates. And this slide demonstrates where the successful projects tended to group. Given there's only been one round of IFP so far, drawing conclusions about the success rate data by these codes is limited really by the small amount of data available in many field of research codes. So any comments we make here really need to be made with that caveat in mind. However, the information and communication sciences and biomedical and clinical sciences FORs had lower success rates when you compare them to other STEM FORs. While the language, communication and culture, creative arts and writing, and Indigenous studies FORs had relatively high success rates compared to other disciplines within HASS. But you can see really clearly, I think, here that in terms of funded projects, at least at this point, engineering is way out in front. And overall, 40% of grants that were awarded had a primary two-digit FOR of engineering, followed by chemical sciences at 10%, environmental sciences at 8%, and agricultural sciences at 8%. So now we'd like to share some information with you about industry partners. You might know, if you've already read the grant guidelines, that the IFP required one key industry partner per application, but other industry partners were able to be named as well. And although industry is the name of the program, the IFP aimed to support research from all partner organisation types. And from this slide, you can see that overall, the majority of IFP applications had a single industry partner with 62%, followed by 20% with two industry partners. And the average number of partner organisations on grants that were funded was 1.9. So at this stage, I think we can say that the number of industry partners does not appear to have had a consistent and significant effect on success rates. Okay, now we have another slide which shows that the majority of key industry partners on IFP grants were Australian company industry bodies at 63%, followed by state and local government at 16%, Australian non-profits at about 9%, and the Commonwealth Government at about 8%. So the success rates were comparable across most organisation types at about 11%, but those applications that included Commonwealth Government were slightly lower at about 5%. However, the fact that state and local government had the highest success rate at 13% suggests that government organisations were considered equitably in this process. We also thought it would be helpful to show you some data on co-contributions. And just to clarify this for people who might be more familiar with linkage projects, there is a difference between linkage projects and industry fellowships. I'm sure you're aware that in the linkage project scheme, partner organisations have to provide cash or in-kind contributions that at least match the ARC funds requested, with a total eligible cash contribution at least 25% of funding. And eligible organisations must also commit in-kind or cash contributions. In contrast, in IFP, participating organisations, that is either the eligible organisation, which is usually a university, or the partner organisations, co-contributions were not an eligibility requirement, but the level of commitment they demonstrated did form part of the overall assessment. And if you look at this slide, you can see that the overall ratio of participating organisations' contributions to the ARC funding for IFP in 2023 was $1.33 to $1. The ratios were similar amongst most of the IFP schemes, but IE had the highest at $1.43 to $1. So that's the data on co-contributions in funded projects. Now we might look at partner organisations and contributions by contribution type. So overall, the ratio of partner organisations' contribution to ARC funding for IFP in 2023 was 74 cents to $1. So cash contributions make up approximately 1/3 of contributions that are made by partner organisations. So that's about 35%. And that was really the highest in the Laureate scheme and the lowest in the early career scheme. So that table can give you a bit of a snapshot into what kind of contributions were being made in applications that were successfully funded. Now, that is quite a lot of information for you to digest in these early minutes, but I think, in the tradition of good university lectures, we provide the hard stuff early up where people are most likely to concentrate clearly on the data information. Now we're going to provide you with some more qualitative information, and I'm going to pass to Professor Annika Gowya, who's going to share some insights and feedback with you about the first round of the IFP from the ARC's perspective, and also from the perspective of somebody who was present during those selection advisory committees. So Annika, I'm going to pass over to you now to talk a bit about your observations.
Great, thanks very much, Christina. As Christina mentioned, I'm really speaking to you from my perspective as an executive director that was present at the SAC meetings at the 3 different levels of industry fellowships. So I can relate to you a little bit of information about how the applications were received by the general assessors and some tips for crafting a good application. The first point that I wanted to mention is to really make sure that applicants know and write for their audience. So in some of the quantitative data that Christina presented to you earlier, we looked at the composition of the different selection advisory committees. And the key thing to take away from that information is that you are writing, particularly when the general assessors are concerned, for a broad multidisciplinary audience. You are also writing for a combination of academic experts and industry experts. So that's something that you really need to keep in mind when crafting the application. It applies to all ARC schemes to a certain extent, that your application must be concise, it must be clear, it must avoid technical jargon. But here you really need to think about having a clear and convincing pitch that can appeal to both industry experts and academic experts across multidisciplinary panels. The second point that I'd make is that the scheme itself conceptualises a very wide meaning of industry, but applicants must be able to demonstrate that they understand the industry partner's context, and to be able to articulate in their applications the value of the fellowship outcomes and outputs. So as Christina mentioned, we really encourage applications from both STEM and HAS disciplines, and certainly the definition of industry is broad enough to capture both of those camps. But in both cases, applicants need to show the value of the fellowship, not only to themselves, the fellow, the partner organisation, but also the benefit to Australia more broadly. And this is particularly important for the industry fellowships. So we're not looking here for consultancy research, but rather, as with all of the ARC linkage program schemes, this idea of co-designed research is really, really important. And that's taken to a new height in the industry fellowships by the notion of the industry fellow being embedded in the organisation as well. So when you're addressing that assessment criterion of commitment and alignment, it's really key to remember the principles of co-design and embedded research. Another thing to consider is that the forms for the industry fellowships are different to the discovery fellowship forms. They're much shorter, and this is something that applicants struggled with. There is a real need to articulate the information that you're asked to provide in a clear and concise way. The assessors across the board really appreciated the shorter format of the form, but as applicants, you need to make sure that the key points that you want to make are in there, including how the research itself will be done. Another aspect of the scheme that differentiates it from the Discovery Project Fellowships is the fact that, with the exception of the industry laureates, all of the selection criteria are weighted equally. So in the assessment, this places greater emphasis on the project itself when contrasted with the Discovery Project Fellowships. So just be cognizant that you need to write to every aspect of the assessment criteria. The industry fellowships are different from the linkage projects, and they are different from Discovery Fellowships. The quality of candidates who are applying really should be commensurate with the established Discovery Fellowship schemes. So the industry fellowship shouldn't be seen as a second order scheme, even though it's a new fellowship scheme for the ARC, but rather we're looking for candidates with that excellent high calibre of research. They may, though, have different career paths, they may have slightly different trajectories, but the commonality in all the fellowships that we look for is research excellence. And the final point that I wanted to make here is that we know that the success rate for the first round of the fellowships was low, and this was due to the very high number of applications. So just reinforcing there, once again, the need for quality applications and our expectation that candidates are of the highest quality. So back to you, Christina.
Thank you, Annika. That was fantastic. And I'm sure lots of really good advice there for people who are thinking of applying in the next round of IFP. Now I think we have our special feature for today, which are some guest speakers who were successful applicants in the last round of IFP, which was in fact the first round of IFP. So the first speaker we have with us today is Associate Professor Philip Casey, who is an Industry Laureate Fellow at the University of Adelaide. And I'm going to invite Associate Professor Casey to speak to us for 5 minutes about his experience of being an applicant and being a successful applicant and one of the 8 Industry Laureate Fellows who was awarded earlier this year. So over to you, Phil.
Thanks, Christina. Was there a slide? Yes. Okay. Thank you. So I'm coming to you from Ghana land. I'd like to acknowledge the Ghana the Ghana people, as the traditional unceded custodians of the Adelaide Hills and Plains, which is the land on which I live, learn and work. I'd also like to start by saying how incredibly honoured, humbling and energising it is to have been awarded one of these fellowships. This is a photo of my 5-year-old self on the first day of school, I think planning for this fellowship. Obviously, he had no idea back then, but I think it's really important that we look at how you get to a point of being successful. And I believe that that perseverance and preparation, as well as the partnerships we develop, are extremely important. I heard a story a couple of years ago about a letter that Jacinda Ardern wrote as her 14-year-old self to a New Zealand newspaper, highlighting her plans to become Prime Minister of New Zealand. And that's something that, really sticks with me. I don't think many of us, including myself, have that level of commitment or foresight. But I had been working towards this program of work for over 5 years. I didn't know how it was going to be funded until this scheme came around. I had ideas on the horizon, but it wasn't until the industry laureates and the fellowships were announced that I realised that I had an avenue for a program of work that I've been developing with partners. And I haven't always been successful with the ARC. There was a period of around 8 years where I submitted 11 discovery grants before I was successful again. These schemes are incredibly competitive, and I like to think that I learnt from that iterative process of rejection and success as to how to work through that. I actually quite like the pain of grant writing. I think it forges ideas. It helps me formalize some of those ideas, and I accept that they're not always going to be successful, but when they are, it is a fabulous experience. I really like to collaborate and build partnerships, and in preparation for this fellowship, I had done a lot to build up a community of industry partnerships that I could call on quite quickly for this first round to support me. But they were genuine partnerships, and I like to think that I was able to express that in the application I made, which allowed the committee, the college, to actually see that committed relationship that I had. I've also spent a lot of time recently becoming visible. I recognise that a Laureate Fellowship requires leadership. And so I've been doing a lot more recently, television appearances with ABC News, writing more articles for The Conversation, putting my work and the work of my lab out there, funding my students and my postdocs to go to conferences with me, and being part of a community so that I am visible to a broader national community. These are the people that are going to be reviewing our grants, our fellowships. I think it's really important, actually. I don't like to hold things in. I like to talk about the program of work I'm developing. I like to almost allow people to provide me with feedback so I can do a reasonability test of what I'm proposing. So I like to think that quite a few people knew that I was actually in a place to be submitting a program of work around a laureate. Now, I think it's important that you distinguish yourself, that you believe that you're a leader in this space, and that others then come along for that ride. Unfortunately, being prepared means you do have to put absolutely everything into your application. And uh, I'd really recommend working with your university research services. I used a grant writer to assist me with feedback. I also was mentored by a current laureate fellow, and I reached out to a small targeted community of people around me who were able to provide the support and feedback. You're not alone. A fellowship, sometimes I think people think of as sort of a single point, but it's a program of work and you're not alone. And having a community of support around that includes your industry partners, but also includes your peers and academic and research colleagues, I think is really important as well. I certainly worked with my industry partners during the writing phase. I travelled to them as much as I could in that sort of short turnaround. And those partnerships and that visibility with those partnerships, I think, is really, really important. Finally, I'm a really strong believer in that there isn't a single path to success, and that we all take these different roads. I'm very pleased and very humbled to be awarded my laureate, and I hope that I can reach out and assist other people. And I think you have to put everything you can, because it's a really privileged position to be, and I wish everyone the best success in a very tough series of rounds to come. So thank you for the opportunity. Thanks, Christina.
Thank you very much, Phil. And I remember the day of the announcement. You're also a big Twitter user. And I think, was it the day of the announcement you'd posted that you'd had cake for breakfast? And then you found out that afternoon later on that morning you'd won the laureate, and you were saying some days you just have to eat cake. So that was fantastic. Thank you. Really helpful advice to potential applicants. Next up, we have Dr. Tracy Sletton, who's an industry mid-career fellow from Monash University. So I'm going to hand over to Tracy for her words of wisdom. Thank you very much. Over to you.
Lovely. Thank you very much. And firstly, thank you for the invitation to today. But again, as Phil said, I'm very honoured to have been awarded one of these fellowships. So I guess to begin with, really speaking to why I thought this scheme was appropriate for me. Similar to Phil, I've been working with industry for a very long time. So a lot of my research is directly translational. where I really translate a lot of the scientific knowledge of what we've developed over a long period of time to industry needs. So just to give, I guess, some specific examples, I work a lot with shift workers. And so what we learn about sleep and circadian disruption in shift workers and understand the biology of that, there is a need for us to translate that into solutions for shift workers. And so for such a long time, I've really had a foot in each camp in really doing the research and developing that scientific knowledge, but then also a long period of translating that into the real world and industry benefits from that in obvious ways. So similar to Phil, I would say a long period of development work. So I've really developed these relationships with multiple industry partners over a long period of time. And so when a scheme like this was announced, it really just seemed like a perfect fit to really take what we do as scientists and make some change both for industry and for the community. So for myself, that's really why I saw this scheme as a perfect avenue. And I guess what I really liked for myself and my advice for others, I suppose, is that I was able to approach this scheme a little differently from the perspective of really thinking about the real world impacts of what you do and how you can translate your science into something that people can benefit from. So we spend a lot of time thinking about our research outputs on paper, our publications and all of these things, but really we're all in this to make a difference. And so it's a great opportunity for us to think about what is that difference that we can make and how we can write about our research and how we can promote it in a way where people can really see the impact that we're able to have. So from the perspective of tips, I guess I would look at thinking really significantly about what your outputs are going to be. So in my case, it was an industry-driven technology, something that was already in development and had been co-designed with industry in multiple shift working organisations over a long period of time. So I was able to really demonstrate that there is a key industry need, that industry wants this as a solution and there is a huge gap to be filled. And so really able to write about the impact of the research is important. And that it's not just relevant to the key industry partners that you have involved in your project, but actually extends to populations across Australia. So while I had sort of a high profile partner involved within this application, what I also had is my sort of second and third phase to the research is how to translate that to other populations across Australia as well and broaden that impact. So I think as a reviewer that would be something that's pretty important. So it's not just a product or that particular output, but also that broader translation and what is that accelerated pathway or pathway for deploying whatever you're going to produce in your research. Then sort of along that lines of the commitment and alignment aspect, really around mutual benefits, both for your industry partner, but also for your own research as well. So I was able to bring a few partners together, or two in particular that had different interests, but there was a gap. And so the three of us together, myself as a fellow, the deployment partner, and then the development partner, were able to actually all support each other and contribute, and we all have things to get out of the project. But also identifying the opportunities for future expansion. So not just within this project, but what is coming next? What are the other things that you're already talking to your partners about that this is one step towards? And if you can show that there's more capacity going forward, I think that would be seen as really good. And what has already been mentioned as well is demonstrating your partner's commitment. That may not be cash, but if it is, obviously that's a bonus, showing that they're able to or are willing to put cash into the project, shows their commitment, but also a significant amount of in-kind. If they're going to put their time into this, that's showing that it's something that they actually want to get out of it. And thirdly, I think it's really around selling yourself and your own capabilities. So for me, really demonstrating that there has been that long history of experience in industry, that ability to understand their needs, to identify their needs, and translating scientific principles into those core needs for industry or community, and show how you have been able to embed yourself in industry, that you're not just picking up the phone and calling somebody a few weeks before an application is due, but that you have these existing relationships, even if it's not with this partner. Think about ways that you've done this before. Think about how you've demonstrated impact outside of sort of our scientific realm, but out within industry and community as much as possible, to really demonstrate that you've got the skills to do this, and there isn't anybody else that can do it in the same way, I guess. But I will pause there, and again, thank you very much.
Thank you, Tracy. Also, excellent advice for potential applicants to the scheme. And I really like the elements of the process that both of you have so far emphasised. Our next speaker is Dr. John Lee, the Industry Early Career Fellow from the University of South Australia. So it's South Australia represent today. I didn't quite realise that coincidence. So back again to Adelaide and to John. Over to you.
Okay, hi everyone. Thank you, Christina and Anika and Peel, Trace, for your speech. I'm very, happy to have the chance to share my thoughts on this remarkable industry fellowship program with all of you today. And then I would like to express my deep appreciation to the esteemed member of the ARC for providing these incredible opportunities. So today, I'd like to talk to you about why this industry fellowship program aligns so well with my goals and ambitions. Then I will share with my a couple of tips for preparing the successful application. Well, first of all, one of the good things of this program is very strong emphasis on fostering collaboration between academia and the industry. Well, I believe it is very important to bridge the gap between the theory and practice to ensure that our research findings have a real world impact. So in many master's or doctoral programs, the focus often remains on the a theoretical analysis due to a lot of the constraints, such as limited access to the experimental equipment and then budget limitation for conducting the actual experiments. Well, even during my own doctoral studies, even though I conducted some experiments, the core analysis mainly, relied on the simulation. Well, this was because of the nature of my research topic, which involved using the a thermal storage system for building. But this program provides very good opportunity to the researchers for work directly with industry partner, and then chance to collaborate with them, and finally it leads to our career advancement. Whereas secondly, these programs emphasis on innovation and entrepreneurship is a perfect match for my research interest. In today's rapidly changing world, it is crucial for researchers not only to discover the new knowledge, but also to apply that knowledge to the real world solution. Where this program actively encourages and supports fellows in developing their entrepreneurial skills, and then allowing us to explore the practical application of our research findings. And by combining the research excellence with entrepreneurial speed, this program creates an environment that fosters innovation and empowers researchers to make a meaningful impact in their field. Well, now I'd like to share a couple of my tips for preparing the compelling application. Well, firstly, it is crucial to have a very clear like a research aim when preparing the application. So in my case, since completing my PhD program in 2019, I have been actively working with my industry partners to bring my idea to commercialization stage. So over the last 4 years, I have further developed my research topic on my thermal storage system, which is the topic of my PhD. With the support of my industry partner, actually, I was able to build a real size prototype of the storage system, and I could conduct the field test by installing two units in the commercial buildings. This hands-on experience has provided me with invaluable insight and very clear understanding of the next step of my topic, my project. So in my application, I try to make sure to convey the practical nature of my project, and then I try to persuade the readers that it's not it's not just a theoretical concept, but something that can be truly be achieved uh, by providing detailed description of my research activities, even to non-expert reviewers. I aim to demonstrate that my project is feasible and then commercially viable. So like the applicant should remember to provide a very clear and concise description of your research agenda, and then showcasing your like a fashion, and helping the selection committee to recognize the value of your work. And another important aspect to highlight is your ability to collaborate effectively with your industry partner. Uh, Collaboration is, I think, is a key in this program. So it is essential to showcase your like a past experience and skills in working with industry partners. In my case, my industry partner has played an important role in connecting me with relevant stakeholders in this area. So well, this is not only serves as a like a form of the advertisement for my research output, but also strengthen my like collaborative activity abilities. Well, additionally, the maintaining a strong relationship with my university professors and staff members have been instrumental in my research journey. So one of the university professors actually advised me to apply for this program, and then provide significant support during the application process. So working closely with my two PhD supervisors who have a very deep knowledge in this subject, and then they also have very comprehensive understanding on me. So it has been very highly beneficial. So please don't forget to showcase your ability to communicate effectively, adapt to different working style, and solve the complex problem through the collaboration. Well, this will demonstrate your readiness to thrive in the dynamic and collaborative environment that this program offers. So finally, the assistance of university staff in preparing the application is quite important. As you may know, because they know how to describe the application to make the reader have a better understanding. So in terms of this respect, the following the guides of the university is very important. So I really appreciate the assistance of university for the preparation of this application. So all overall, the industry fellowship program provides an excellent platform for early career researchers like me, like myself, to bridge the gap between the academia and the industry, the fostering the collaboration, innovation, and then entrepreneurship. So by clearly articulating your research objective and demonstrating your ability to collaborate and showcasing your entrepreneurial mindset, you can prepare like a compelling application that stand out to the selection committee. So I hope my insight and tips have been helpful in understanding why I believe this program is an excellent match for my research goal, and then in preparing your the own application. Thank you for your attention. Thank you.
Thank you so much to Phil, Tracy, and John. They were all just fantastic tips for applicants there. And, the emphasis on relationship building, on communication, on clarity of question, on making your project appeal to a broader audience than just the very narrow range of your own discipline. That is all fantastic advice. And I think the other common thread running through all of those presentations was that there are applications that come out of deep relationships with industry that have been developed over quite a long time. So it's not, as Tracy put it, picking up the phone 5 minutes before the applications are due and seeking out a partner. These are projects that are coming out of relationships that have been built across time. And I think John's emphasis too on working still with for early career researchers, working still with supervisors and seeking that advice and seeing how they can put you in touch with partners and mentor the application. Phil was also mentoring a lot of effort around mentoring. So it was just a really rich presentation, and I'm so pleased that we asked you to come along and speak to our potential applicants. We really very much appreciate the insights that you've given to people. I think it really puts flesh on the bone, so to speak, of what an application takes and the kind of approach that you need to be taking to your research, probably not just for this application, but to become a rounded academic and make that really meaningful contribution to your discipline and to the research culture in this country. So I think you all really exemplified how well it is possible to do that for academics. So thank you so much for your presentations. We really appreciated them all. I think in a forum of this size, we probably don't have time for questions now, but we are very grateful to all of you who came along and attended today, and we hope that the information has been very helpful for you in terms of preparing your application and next steps. I think the Laureate the mid-career applications open fairly soon. Oh, there we go. I specifically asked for this slide and started talking as if it wasn't even there. Here's the opening dates for the next round of the scheme. So you can see that mid-careers open on the 5th of July, industries on the 22nd of August, and early career on the 6th of September. So you have some time, particularly if you're an early career, to really start working on that application. And if you're a mid-career in industry, you probably want to, and Laureate, you probably want to have made a start already. But we hope you found this information session helpful. I certainly found it hugely interesting hearing our successful applicants, and I wish all of you the very best in developing some excellent applications that are going to result in some excellent funded projects, we hope, for you. So thank you everyone for your attention today.